it's time for us to take part of the next speaker, Mr. Simon Berner. You're working at the University of Applied Sciences in Graz in Austria, right? And you will talk about the systems that is needed in order to implement a new industry.
Yes.
In the world. But I know that you're going to have some examples from Austria.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here and to get in touch with with the society here, with the community about insects and eating insects. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to Pernilla for inviting me. It's really a great opportunity for me, so thank you very much for this. And also thank you very much to Niels from Tebrito. He brought me in touch with your community, and I hope this will be fruitful. Therefore, I will be happy to tell you something about what we are doing. I'll tell you about a project which we are doing in the moment. Maybe I should say my name. My name is Simon Berner, and I'm a food engineer and futurologist. And maybe this sounds a little, it's two quite different topics which I handle. And I started with the engineering and came to this futurology later on. And more I understood as an engineer that the bottleneck in nowadays to do a transition is usually not the technology, but we love to focus on technology because we can influence them, but we cannot so easily influence social systems. And therefore we are very much into technology, which might not be the final answer. Before getting into the insect topic, yes, of course, I briefly want to tell you something about my university. It's called University of Applied Sciences, UANEUM in Graz. We have a couple of bachelor and master degrees in 6 departments. One of them is engineering department, and this is where I am located. We have a couple of masters and bachelor degrees. 2 of them are especially focused on food issues. It's sustainable food management and food product and process design. As you see, there are a lot of different engineering issues in this field, and it's very fruitful to have this interdisciplinary approach which we can follow in our projects. The more interesting thing, I think, is on the right side you can see the institute where I'm located is called Institute of Applied Production Sciences, and we have beneath others 2 research groups. They are quite small, around about 5 to 6 people in every group. One is called Sustainable Product and Process Development. This is where we are faced with the issue about sustainable proteins. So it's more about engineering. And we have a second research group which is called Sustainable Food Systems, which is following a systemic approach. And what you see on the right side, just to give you some idea what we are doing in this group, it's not about engineering, it's about more social science and systemic science. We made a scenario-based roadmap for a resilient, more local food supply chain in the region around Graz. And it was very interesting. It's as I said, it's a scenario-based road mapping process where we made a multi-actor approach to involve all the players along the entire food value chain and from society. So we have a quite good picture of the system. This project was not focused on insects, but it's quite helpful if we go to insects that we have an in-depth understanding of the system and the players and the bottlenecks and hurdles which are there. The players are the most important thing, policy, the startups, the big companies, so this is very important, I think. I like to go to this topic always with World Overshoot Day. I think you are all familiar with this theory. Do you know the idea about this World Overshoot Day? So the idea is you have a certain amount of resources that would be you have available for 1 year in the whole world. And the question is, how fast do you use them? We are teaching our students in business and economy. And the funny thing is, if we would teach them about production planning, for example, and tell them they have to produce all the year and they will use all the resources until April, we maybe would not do this. But when it comes to our survival of the human race, we are very willing to do this. And it's very funny, I looked at it, I never looked at Sweden, but I think the Swedish situation about entomophagy is a little similar to the Austrian, and we are, on the other hand, similarly bad when it comes to resource management, obviously. So we are similar. In the beginning of April, we have wasted all the resources for the whole year. Yeah, it's how we do our business, obviously. So I think I always love this because it really shows it's impressive. When I was young, I first read about it. I was maybe 16 years old. It was in December, and I thought, oh, it will be Christmas. This 1 month will be fine. But in the meantime, we have 9 months left without resources. Oh, somebody will pay for it, but it will be someone else. So this is a good, I think, a good introduction into the entomophagy. I think the insects have a real huge potential to make things better. I'm convinced. I'm also convinced that we will be able to use them in a way which is totally unsustainable, because we did this with many other technologies as well. But I'm really optimistic that we will do it better. And I read in the flyer of the conference also, this is what I usually also say, it can be a part of a puzzle, of a sustainable puzzle. And the advantage of insects is, I think, that they fit with many other parts of a puzzle. So I'm really convinced that insects can be a very potent part of a puzzle with a high potential. Good. So much about this. So in the following slides, I would not like to kill you with details about the project. My idea is more to give you an understanding what we did. So the details can be discussed later on, but I'll try to give you a rough idea what we did to identify potential similar situations, common hurdles or whatever. So the project, Sustainable Protein, Integrated Insect into Innovations. It's a 5-year project. It's funded by the Austrian Federal Research Funding Institute agency. We got 1 million euros, and the main objective is capacity building in the field of sustainable protein. And we choose the insects, especially the T-molitor, to check out if this is possible. So the research question is, how may protein be produced sustainably and efficiently along the entire food value chain in Austria? To be honest, we also wrote, can protein be produced sustainably? Because it's a question, it's not so sure. As I said, we can also make it in a way which is by far not sustainable. We focus on local path, on rather short supply chains, resilient chains. We want to develop technologies and products, and the idea was to have a process chain that works and feed products and food products. So the idea was not to analyze every detail in this food value chain. The idea was to just show it works. It was not even that it works very good, just to show it works, because we have to convince companies to do it, and they won't ask us about the final detail of the methionine in the what dilution in what organism. They want to see that it works and that it's feasible. And this was our aim, to show that it works. So we focus on nationally available material flows, feasible food and feed chains. We try to integrate all the stakeholders, of course, because this will be the hurdles in the innovation process if they are not involved. We also try to involve consumers, producers. Acceptance is a huge problem about insects, so it's not common to eat them. So the products and processes, of course, the final idea is that we find companies or startups that bring this to life, and they run a business. In which way? Maybe they make business models, or they're breeding themselves. It could be whatever they are doing to bring this insect issue and make a sustainability optimization. I think this is the central slide. It's a quite simple slide, but it is how you can very easily understand what we try to do. So on the very bottom here, you see some overarching issues we try to address in the project. And above it, you see the topics we try to focus on. And it's quite simple. If you look on the bottom, we first started, of course, to look at the market, because if you have no market, we don't have to start, or we would have to generate a market, and it's not easy. But we looked at the market. In the project, it is always important for us to have this food chain perspective, not to focus too much on one part of this chain, but to have the whole perspective. The laws have been very important and are still important. Fortunately, we got some optimization there in the last years. Hygiene and analytics is a huge topic when it comes to the question which proteins or which microorganisms may be helpful or might be a problem. The footprint was always a problem. So these are the overarching issues, and then it's quite simple. We asked ourselves, we need a feed for the insects, we need to rear the insects, we need to process the insects, and we need to make products from it, and then we want to make food and feed products for humans, for fish and chicken. So it's quite simple, and some frame conditions are that the whole thing should be ecologically sound. When we start on the left side, of course we can feed them with soybeans from South America. It doesn't work well, but it would be possible. But of course, we do not want to have a competition situation with food and maybe not with feed for other animals. So it should be ecologically sound. They should be locally available, the feed stuff for the insects. It has to be safe, of course. And the waste issue is a very important issue. We decided to do not on waste because we will get so many problems that we won't be able to make the whole chain. So we said waste is a huge leverage, maybe in future, but now it's a problem. Insect rearing, we had to construct some facilities to think about conditions, about diseases, about processes and so on. Then we process the insects. We need, again, facilities, technology, it has to be safe, the processing as well as the materials. Then we had to do some product engineering, for food and feed. Sensory is a big topic because especially when it comes to acceptance, people should eat it. How much of the insect are they willing to see when they eat it, and all these topics. It should be safe. And finally, we are thinking about acceptance and health of the products for fish as feed and as food. And finally, we are thinking about the market again, and maybe, hopefully, this will fit together because then it theoretically could work. I'd like to go through the work packages with you, and I just want to give you some brief ideas what we did. You can ask me about details later then. So we have a work package about project management, and the first thing we did then was environmental analysis and stakeholder analysis. We looked at the whole food system, market demand situation. One big topic was which feed do we choose for the insects. We identified, I think, 60 or 70 byproducts which we could use. Then we checked if they are available and what's surprising, and it's a seasonal availability, and are they safe, and are they heavy metals, and a lot of criteria. Then we choose a couple of them, and then we made feeding trials with this. To give you an idea, we made this kind of competence map where we showed where do we have raw materials, in which amounts, who are the players, where are still startups, where are research institutes, where are the players, just to get an impression what's going on in Austria. So I'll go through this quite fast now just to give you an impression. There is already a report available about this work package, about the environmental analysis. In the next, we have a work package about analytics. This is mostly chemical and microbiological issues along the entire food value chain for the insects. Hygiene and hazards are the main topics. And when it comes to chemical analysis, we focused on amino acids and fatty acids. How are they influenced by the feed they get, and all these issues. This is the work package 3. So we bought a couple of machines, gas chromatography and HPLC. And then we are doing the analysis of amino acids and of fatty acids for the mealworms and for the food we develop from the mealworms to get understanding what is happening there. Then we have a work package. This was the most challenging one. It's the mass rearing. Okay, it's mass rearing. You can discuss it's really mass rearing. If you compare it with big companies, it's not a mass rearing. Maximum was maybe 100 of these boxes, so it's not really huge. So we had to design the process, and we did construct some machines to have a partly automated sorting process, at least, not the feeding but the sorting. And we made the feeding trials with all the substrates we choose. And then we yeah, we decided to choose monosubstrates, so not to mix and optimize the diet for the insects, but to use single substrates, because yeah, our approach was more thinking in small, decentral, robust breeders, which maybe are in a container and that can be brought to the source of the raw material, and we thought less about when we assessed the sustainability of the raw materials to make a centralized process. Of course, it had to be a little centralized, but maybe not one in Austria, but one in maybe 50 miles or something like that. And so we went for monosubstrates and looked about 2 generations how this monosubstrate affects the fertility and the conversion rates of the mealworms. This is the results. We have a lot of data about conversion rates and surveillance of the mealworms and so on. So we checked a couple of materials. What you see on the right side, this is our top 8 materials. I can tell a lot about why we took this. There are local players who supply these things, but these are the ones who work. Some are meaningful, some are not meaningful. For example, soybean is not meaningful, but it works, and we wanted to know if this would work. Our favorite substrate finally was these malt germ pellets, because we have a malt plant close by, and they have a constant output of a huge amount of these malt germ pellets, and they work quite well. Further, we built some breeder here. It's for climate and humidity control only, not for the gas composition. And we built this sorting machine. We also taught a computer to differentiate between male and female meal beetles. But the computer can do it, but the robot can't grab them, so it's not finalized, this topic. They cannot grab it alive, let's say like this. Yeah, it looks like this. We have a sorting machine, and then you get these fractions, the frass and the exuvia are sucked away, and then you have all these fractions. What we are about now to do is we are drying them. We checked the heat drying, microwave and freeze drying. Usually we use microwave drying. We have small scales, so it's easy if you go for bigger scales. A large scale microwave is not so easy any longer, but heat works as well. But from our sensory assessment, microwave was the best. We defatted them mechanically only by pressing. Then we also tried the wet path to mill them down, the dead mealworms, and to make a centrifugation. We just made some trials about this. And of course, it's important to monitor all the data about these processes. Then we are about to develop products. Of course, that should be according to market requirements, and we focus on quality. There was one issue about off flavors, but this was not really a problem for long. The focus about this product development was not only to meet the market demands. For me, it was also important to think about design for manufacture, to make the products as the hurdles for implementing them in existing machines as low as possible, because nowadays no one will buy a new machine for making insect products. So we developed the products that the existing producer can handle them on the existing machines. It's one more hurdle for companies to go into this topic. So I think we have maybe 20 products. It's not rocket science. We usually integrated meal from mealworms in existing products. It's really not rocket science. Up to 15 to 20%, I guess most people wouldn't recognize it even. We also made, for example, like soy sauce, so a seasoning sauce from fermented mealworms. It works really good. It's like you do it with soybeans. So we made a lot of different products from different food segments. What we are now about to do is an acceptance test. We made an acceptance test or a sensory assessment with, I think, 150 people. Most of them are happy about it, and it's not very spectacular. It's only if you think too much about it, then it's always the same issue with the insects. We are doing a lot of research, of course, of the nutritional values. I think up to now, many of the people who eat insects might come, or some of them who are very willing to eat insects are the people who want to eat very much proteins. And there are some bars already to give for some sportive people. What we also want to do is product development feed. We did not yet start. Or we started with the analysis, but we did not yet develop them. And then finally, we have some work package about dissemination and visiting other conferences and hopefully get in touch with other initiatives to make the whole thing fruitful. So I think finally I would like to give some ideas or to learnings, let's say, which might be helpful if we think about learning from each other. So in my point of view, we have contact with many small startups, or with many people, or many, let's say maybe it's 20, who think about going into this insect topic. There are small ones. These are often idealists who have an idea and they read something about it. They are sustainability driven. And we have also huge investors who really think they can earn a lot of money with it. Maybe it's, so we have both of them who come to us. I think what's also interesting is that we know that some very big players already offer like turnkey solutions, or they even say they offer turnkey solutions. In Austria, it's up to now more a roots movement. So the startups we have, they did not go for a big company and bought this turnkey solution. It was always a roots movement. There have been mostly some young people, some from university, and they said, let's do something. They made something with the university, and then they went out and did it. But we do not yet have big players who went to Bühler or someone else and said, I'll buy a couple of millions facility and please build it there and I will just use it. So we see it's more a roots movement up to now. What we also see is the mealworms are still quite expensive, and they are in a niche for people who want, some really eat it like a usual diet, but most of them are trying it because they are curious or it's a cake for a party or whatever. And therefore the market is growing very much. But if you grow from zero, you can grow, of course, very much. But it's quite small. The biggest thing I know in Austria is still a company that who is doing it in the largest scale in Austria. They are integrating the Hermetia into pet food. It's due to legislation and a couple of issues why they choose this way. But this is, I think, the biggest scale production up to now in Austria. And as I mentioned before, I think the bottleneck about the whole issue with the insects is not the technology. I'm sure it's not. There are a couple of huge challenges about technology, but it's not the bottleneck, I'm sure. And I think it's really important to have exchange and bringing the players together. And finally, we have to convince people to do it. And it might be not only the money aspect to do it, I think. Especially when the question was if you find young people, the ones who really are driving the topic up to now in Austria, this is young people who are convinced that they have to change something. It's up to now not yet the players who say, I want to earn billions of euros with it. It's the one who are open to exchange to, it's very, and it's a nice environment to work, I think, because there are young people who want to change something. They have new ideas. They're not only taking the milk and making cheese or whatever. They want to change something and they think, can I integrate it here, or can I substitute this? Or I think it's very interesting field for research to work there. So finally, let me say, I think it's still a long way to go. And bringing people together and connecting and involving young people is, I think, one of the most important things at this level, I guess. So this is our team. It's my colleagues and, of course, the mealworms who support us. Thank you for your attention. If you want to get in touch, this is my name. I put the picture here because it's an older picture. Maybe you would not any longer recognize me. You will find me on LinkedIn and on the FH homepage. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I still think that we still have time for a question or two. Yes. And while he's running with a microphone, all those findings that you've been doing in Austria, do you think that they are applicable on like Sweden and Norway, or are there differences between the countries that makes them a little different here?
I think on the one hand, the things about the insects and technology analytics, they are directly usable, I think.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Maybe the raw materials are somehow different, but basically it makes sense, I think, to exchange this. And I think when it comes to the more systems aspect, there are some things are similar and some things different. But from my experience, where it's similar, you can learn from each other what works and what doesn't work. But even if it's different, I think it's very helpful to understand in different situations why it works or not, because nevertheless you can abstract it and understand the system, and then maybe you will need another solution, but you understand the bottlenecks and the drivers and the hurdles, and so I think exchange is fruitful, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. I got really curious because you're both testing different fodder for the insects and making products. Did the fodder influence the flavor?
As far as we have seen, not yet, but the sensory assessment we did up to now, it was just a preference test. And I think we won't manage in the project to get such deep. So what we found out, for example, if you, for example, feed them with chilies, we tried, then you get a spicy chili note in the, but this is, it's easy to understand. So this is an extreme example, and yes, there is some effect, but if you go very deep and compare a usual feed for the insects, we did not compare, for example, bran with mold residues. We tried the extreme ones like chili. But chili works good. It's like you don't recognize it really, but it's a little better. Yeah.
Okay, one more question. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for a great presentation. I think the whole project involved so many things. Like it seemed like you must have like competency of like engineering to make the equipment, some that knows about biochemistry to analyze the amino acids, something about market and making new products. So how many different disciplines and competences do you have in your team to kind of cover all these, I would say, different areas in the value chain?
Also, when it comes to the analytics, we have a lab, a chemical lab, and we have this workshop to build some machines, and so some labs to develop products and to process products. And this is what we have, and we have this research group on food on systems, which is more focused on sustainability and social sciences. So this is the core we can do ourselves. And then we have partner institutes in the university, like the Institute of Dietology, and they are doing all the health issues and all the sensory assessment. So we have one department for marketing, and they did all the interviews about acceptance from the market perspective. And so we took all these things together. So we are a big university, but very broad. And on the one hand, it's a disadvantage, but you have close ways. You have experts for many things close by, and this is an advantage in this project. And of course, we are connected with colleagues from Wageningen, for example, because they are very advanced. So we have external partners who also support us, and so we are well connected.
Good. Thank you very much, and a big applaud, and you get some honey to bring back to Austria.
Thank you.